Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Before I introduce my unbelievably badass guest today, Rogue Ways is very pleased to announce the formation of the Eyes Open Network. This new collective of creators is comprised of myself, Benjamin Balderson of Odin's Alchemy, Claude Furry of Talking Nonsense, Steve Poikonon of Slow News Day, and Brad Tracy of JFK to 9/11. These incredible creators will get together at least once a month to deliver a State of the Union roundtable squawkorama. You can expect wacky antics, topical, philosophical wanderings, and nearly illegal amounts of fun. This content will only be available for Patreon members of Rogue Ways, so go to www.patreon.com/rogueways right now to subscribe. But now, on this excruciatingly wonderful day, Rogue Ways is host to someone who deserves a more perfect introduction than I can manage to utter, but I will do my best. There are not many humans who can calculatingly assess the creeping darkness more astutely, run headlong down a path that defies that evil more freely, and gush loving wonder into the heart chakra of the world and all the people in it more effectively than Freeman Fly. Freeman has been living his truth in ways most people can't fathom, and wandering the weird more intimately than most sane people can muster, and he's been doing it for decades. An original decrier of the evils of the puppet masters, an old school reveler in the goodness of all that exists, and a beacon to all who refuse to give up hope. Freeman Fly, thank you so incredibly much for being here today.
Wow, well, thank you. That was an awesome introduction.
It's been building up inside of me for years, so I'm glad that I get to let it out.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to be here with you, Lindsay.
Thank you. Yeah. So we start the episode with a pointless question of the episode, and the one that I came up with for you was, if you were going to reincarnate as something other than a human, what do you think you would reincarnate as and why?
My poodle.
Yeah.
Come over here, Dee. Come here. Oh, if I could be anything, I'd be that poodle. She gets so much love, care, protection. She just lives in a pillow palace. Here she comes.
Aww.
There she is.
What's her name?
Lives in a pillow palace. This is Diva.
Hi, Diva.
Look up there, Dee. She bites groomers, so I can't get her groomed. But no, seriously, I would come back as a dog. I've been a dog all my life anyway, you know, and they get so much more love than humans.
I've thought of that before, but then I get worried, like, what if you get stuck with a horrible owner?
Well,
but
there's always that.
Yeah, but they're so pure of heart, like, yeah, I can see that for sure. I guess no matter what you came back at, it could end up going poorly for you, so.
That's why I want to be Diva. I want somebody like me taking care of me.
True.
Yeah.
I think I might do something like a hawk or an eagle just because I would love to fly all over the place.
Yeah.
That would be fun. All right, so the first question I wanted to know, I know that you've talked about it on your show before, that you have a Freemason father and a mother. Your mother was descended from witches or something?
She was raised by a witch.
She was raised by a witch.
Yeah. Yeah, so Mom, you know, she was quite a tale, and she definitely opened the door for me to keep my childhood alive, keep my child self alive. You know, she had grown up in a war-torn Germany, and so for her, you know, to have us have full of life and freedom and all of that was like a really big deal. But she, my grandfather, he was an ardent anti-Nazi. And so he constantly had to hide in the hills as Mom, you know, would live down. But she had to get taken away, and she was brought to France. And that's when she was brought to this renowned healer witch, a woman who practiced magical spells under the moonlight. And she was renowned. You know, people came for hundreds of miles to have her cure warts by doing rituals under the moonlight.
Wow.
And Mom was always freaked out by all of that, you know, but she believed it, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, as she ended up married to this super rich Freemason, and he was an older man. He's the guy who raised my dad into Freemasonry. And so my mom ended up leaving the old man for my dad. And so she was married to, you know, a couple of Masons on high levels and stuff. And I don't know. Yeah, she was quite an amazing lady.
Yeah. So do you feel like that affected your life growing up? Like, did you kind of get some of that influence of those occult sort of threads? Or was that just in the background and you didn't even connect with it.
Yeah, that was what was pretty strange about everything and why I believe so much in genetic memory, because I was deep into UFOs, deep into, cryptography. I didn't know about Freemasonry until about 93, college. I was in college when I learned of that. And that's when I found out my dad was one, you know what I mean? So I was into all this stuff long before I knew my dad was. And then once it came to me and I was like, wait a minute, I recognize this stuff. My dad has it in his closet.
Yeah.
Then that's when I learned. So honestly, I walked that whole path without ever knowing that it was in my family.
That's so interesting.
And, and I didn't know about mom's real, story the whole time. But her having grown up with body parts in the streets and things like that, it also set the stage for me to know that happens. Yeah. That war happens. Americans, we don't know that. And so having a mom that did know that gave me the freedom to just go and travel like I did, because she built that into me, go live life.
Live it while you can.
Yeah.
So what was your early life like then, as you were kind of starting out as a young adult?
Oh, I was a very shy boy. I didn't talk to people. Took me till about junior high till I started coming out of my shell, and then I became a punk rocker, and somewhat of a rock star. I was even written up in Maximum Rock and Roll for my punk rock band back in the 80s.
Wow, you were destined for fame.
Yeah, it's just constantly thrown at me. I'm not the type of person that seeks the spotlight. I do not like getting on stage. Even, just sitting here with you on video is a little, anxiety ridden. Yeah. So I'm not the kind of person who's ever been chasing the stage, but I keep ending up on it. And, I started at 14 dancing. We had the very first teenage nightclubs back then. And so I was dancing Prince and Michael Jackson before I could do anything else, There was a reason I brought that up, and I can't exactly remember.
Because you were talking about how you weren't, you didn't seek the spotlight,
so but being so shy, you would go to these teenage nightclubs and no one would get on the dance floor. You know how that is, and everybody's just standing outside. I would be the guy that would go out and jump in the middle of the dance floor and just start dancing. I'd have my eyes closed. Yeah. Yes. I would keep my eyes closed so I didn't even think about it. But then I'd open my eyes and sure enough, I was there in a crowd of people. So that's kind of how I've lived my life, because I am a shy person. And so I throw myself into situations. It's been the same with girls, I'm too scared to go talk to a girl. So I just throw myself in front of her and then I have to, right?
Yeah.
And it's pretty much been the same thing with all the lectures and the TV show. It was being asked to be on a television show, start your own television show, was exciting and terrifying. And, you were held accountable for access television. You had to show up every weekend or, cover your story or whatever. You had to put in a rerun or whatever. That hour was yours and you had to cover it. And do you know how I ended up on TV?
No, I would love to know.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So the youth part, I was always a free spirit, always. And from the time I was in high school, I was already sleeping at the beach. I was a beach bum, not making it home until the next day of school and stuff. And then then I started living in a van. And that was, when I was 17, 18, I started living in a van, and I lived in a van for numerous years. Then I got bored with being a beach bum and decided to go to college and got a free ride. That's awesome. I came in as an honors student. I graduated with honors. First thing I did with my degree was lose it.
How do you lose it? Oh, you physically lost it.
Yeah. I don't even know what happened to it.
Awesome.
The very first day I got it, it's got a little ribbon, honors. Oh, cool. Where'd it go? I have no idea. See, but But they paid for my apartment, they paid for my school, my books. It was all because I was a beach bum and I was smart.
Yeah.
I got in the honors program and I was broke. So they gave me the Pell Grants and all of that stuff. And so I went to Valencia Community College and studied interdisciplinary studies, which was really the Club of Rome. It was philosophy meets everything. It was a 2.5-year course that took care of all your required courses. So when I finally ended up at Kansas University, I didn't have to take anything like composition or anything like that. It was all in the IDS. So I'm smart, and I've always been, like a smart kid that loves that kind of stuff. I do calculus for fun,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm a free spirit. So the moment I was done with college, Mom bought me a Volkswagen van, and I started making juggling sticks. And I didn't have any idea what I was going to do with this. I was at a friend's house and just started making them with him, teaching other people how to do it. And I was selling them as fast as I was making them. And it dawned on me that I could do this anywhere. Right? I could be sitting in a park making these things and selling them. So it got this bright idea. Well, why don't I do that? And my mom had bought me this Volkswagen van. And I said, well, let's pack it up. And the friend who had taught me all about Freemasonry and the occult and all of that, who introduced me to all these topics and made me realize my dad was involved, he came with me. But he wasn't as free-spirited. Some people yank the carpet out from underneath them and they can handle it. Most can't.
True.
And he was not one that was ready to have the carpet yanked. He hung for a while. But, like first time the van broke down, he's like, that's it. It's over. Going, leaving. I'm like, dude, I can fix this.
Yeah.
I can build it. But yeah, he abandoned ship. And but there I was just suddenly it actually fulfilled this whole kind of destiny where are you familiar with tarot cards at all?
Very.
So it was really bizarre because here I was, the fool.
Yeah.
And somebody even made me my own fool's cap. I still have it. It's my own personal fool's cap.
I love that you have that, but not your degree.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Right. That's true. It's so true. But so, here I was, a full-on fool. And I decided I was going to hit the road. Didn't know where I was going, what I was going to do. I just knew I could go. And this little black and white spotted dog started pawing at my ankle. Now, if you know the Fool's card.
The traditional, Rider-Waite. Yeah.
He's juggling off a cliff, going into the nowhere with a little black and white spotted dog pawing at his feet. Ian was the dog in the Rider deck. I mean, he was identical. Wow. And what was really weird was we had showed up at my friend's house where I started making the juggling sticks. And that's the dog jumped on my ankle and I didn't know what it was. I looked around. I thought my friend was stepping on me, but it actually was this little dog. And I looked down and I'm like, oh, hey, kids, and we got to go. And he takes off and he runs around the corner and he's sitting at my friend's apartment door. He had been sitting there for 3 days.
Wow.
He
knew that he needed to go with you.
Yeah, and he did. He jumped right in the van. I said, do you want to go? And he jumped right in the van. That dog followed me. I never leashed him. Ever. Yeah. Across the country, 4 times a summer, back and forth, everywhere we went. And that dog followed me for years and years and years. Wow. And so I became literally the fool.
Yeah.
And in that travel, I was becoming the magician. Because my friend had brought his entire magician's library with him. I told him, there's just no way we can haul all this.
There's no room for this, yeah.
And he's like, I can't leave it. He had all of the ancient Crowley books, all the stuff you can get now, but back then you couldn't. This stuff was worth hundreds of dollars.
Pre-internet, yeah.
Oh yeah, and re-release of all the works and stuff. Like he had the original stuff,
which would be interesting to have it now too, because I feel like things have changed dramatically in reprintings and re-releases and on the internet and whatever.
Exactly. but it was all destroyed.
Really?
Yeah.
On this trip?
No, in an act of kindness from myself, I gave my van to a family that wanted to go to Mexico. And instead, she lost the key,
Oh.
lost the title, uh, never took the van, broke into it, smashed in the windows. And then all I asked for was the books. I was like, you can have the van, bring me the books. And instead, they pulled all the books out, threw them away, destroyed them, did whatever. A few survived, which are still on my shelf, and hold a great part in my whole study. It began with all that. But so then I landed in Lawrence, Kansas, and I had I had what was left of the Magician's Library, and suddenly I was working towards the magician. Yin Yang, the little dog of mine that had followed me at my ankle. Now, Yin, back then I would even eat fast food. And we would bring Yin in wherever we went. And I would go into a restaurant like, McDonald's, thank you, Donald Trump, for all the hamburgers.
Yeah.
But Yin Yang would sit at the table and eat a burger with me. No one ever noticed except for the children. Children spotted him every time, but the adults never did. Weird. And he would be at my ankle at all times, and no one ever knew. It was really, except for children, and then I'd go shh, and they'd giggle, and and he'd
this
sit
is just
there
like divine intervention, or some being that was just like meant to be, and like had a goal and had a role in your life and knew what to do.
When I landed in Kansas and stopped traveling, he vanished.
Wow.
Yeah. And the strange story was that the day he vanished, that next morning I was very, very depressed, very sad. Didn't know what to do, putting up the posters, all that good stuff. And all of his dog friends came to my house and curled up with me in my house. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's true.
I would cry. I would cry so hard.
I cried a lot. A lot. I never found Yin again.
It was like his time. He came and he fulfilled his role, and then it's time to go.
I could have never done it without him. I would have never felt safe and all those, just sleeping in weird places all the time. And but he was always there. But yeah.
I'm actually about to start my own van adventure in 3 months or so, I think.
Oh, yeah?
And I'm getting a pit bull to bring with me as well, because I feel the same. It's not as magical, like the dogs didn't just appear at my heel.
Right.
But I'm excited to have a companion on the way, because otherwise I'm going to be alone doing it. But hopefully it'll be as awesome.
You sacrifice for a dog. You do. Your friends can go in and go to places, go and eat and do all the things that other people can do, and you can't. You're stuck on the curb with your dog or in the van. So just know that you will, be isolated in a way because of the dog, but you won't regret it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't go all the same places people go.
Right. Well, so that led you into the magician card, and then this connected with how you first started Freeman TV, or your public TV.
Yeah. Because
okay.
The next one was the goddess, right? The high priestess, or the empress. And that was Colombia. And so I became a glass blower and was traveling the country selling glass. And, concerts, festivals. I've seen them all. I've been to them all. I've been to all the Dead shows, all the, Widespread Panic, String Cheese, Fish, all that stuff. And, it was great because even though I never was a Deadhead or even cared for the music or anything, I was a nomad, and these were my tribes, so it was more about the tribes than about the bands for me. Right. I could care less. I never went into the shows. I just hung out with the tribes. But so I was in Austin, Texas, selling glass pipes at South by Southwest, and I ran into this homeless dude, Zoe, who I give the Zoe Award to whoever does this for other people. But Zoe was this homeless guy on a city bus, old, greasy, gray-haired, long-haired with one white eye, kind of creepy looking, but very nice, And he comes over to me on the bus and he says, "You look so interesting. Can I do your numerology?"
Wow.
I'm like, "Sure." We get to talking. Now, I had one book with me on this trip because I tend to bring a book, but I never read it.
Yeah.
And I brought the Keys of Enoch, J.J. Hurtak. And it was just there. I rarely even looked at it. But it turned out that was the only book that this homeless guy had in his van as well.
Wow.
Like, what are the odds,
What a
that we're sitting
synchronicity.
Keys of Enoch with a homeless guy,
Yeah.
And so he starts doing my numerology and he's like, "Oh my God, you're the goddess. You're the goddess." And, I'm like, I don't know what to think of that.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're so interesting. Can I get off your stop and come with you?" And I'm like, "Sure,
Sure.
So me and Zoe hung for a while, hung out, and he kept doing my numerology. He did numerology, everybody around me, and we found out that we were living in vans just a couple blocks from each other.
Wow.
So one day he came over to my van, and either I was sleeping or wasn't there, and he left a note on my van that said, "You got to go to the mall and go to this meeting. There's a man speaking that you must hear." And he gave me all the bus routes, because you don't usually move your van, you take the bus. And man, in Austin, Texas, I parked on Christmas Light Street there. That's what it's known as, because that's where all the big Christmas light productions go on. And I was completely welcomed by all the neighbors and opened into the coffee shop that was right there. And they took care of me. Like, they would let me bathe in the bathroom, and I slept outside in their street in my van, but I'd get up and, I knew all the baristas and stuff. So, in the neighbors, and they'd invite me in and I made friends, it was like, I lived there, only I lived in the street, what I mean? And never got charged for coffee either.
That's amazing.
But so, I go to this meeting at the mall, and it's George Green. And George Green confesses to being Jimmy Carter's financial advisor, can make $1 billion out of nothing. But he didn't care about any of that anymore because he went out and met the Palladians that are landing at Billy Meyer's place in Switzerland.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. And he decided to publish these extraterrestrials books. And they were called Handbook for a New Paradigm.
Is this, he's like channeling it?
No.
For them, or they?
He claims, and he showed us the pictures and all of this of the Palladians and their craft, that he went up to Billy Meyer's and he met them, and then is publishing this book on their behalf in their words, I guess. I disagree with the book. I disagree with Handbook for a New Paradigm. I think it's confusing and malarkey, and yet it really dug in, and a lot of people really dug into that. There were 3 of them. Yeah, I read Handbook for a New Paradigm, and I was just like, this is total crap. I could teach you a whole lot better, get out the Celestine prophecies, get out, something that, even the original Palladian works, Barbara Hand Clow, Barbara Marciniak, that kind of stuff. You get way more out of it. Okay. I don't know, but everybody seemed to be really hooked on this book. It was weird, especially the guy who put me on television. So we're there at this meeting, and the guy takes a small break, and I go out and hang out with the smokers, and I start telling my story. Now, what I wanted to do was pretend to be an alien.
Yeah.
Because I look like these Palladians, I have long, kind of wild hair. I'm a wild person, and I've got this incredible story to tell. You see, no one had ever heard of occult corporate logos. They had never heard of high-profile rituals in government or, Hollywood. These were all...
You're like the first person to expose all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nobody had heard anything like what I was telling. And this really tall guy that I thought looked like an alien comes bounding towards me, and he says, "You need a TV show." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Would you do it?" And I'm like, "I don't know. What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, would you do it? If I gave you money right now to go down and start a television show, would you do it?" And I'm just in Austin for the weekend, and I'm thinking to myself, well, this is crazy. This is crazy. At about 5 minutes or less, I was like, fine, I'll do it. Let's do it. And he's like, all right, I'm writing you a check. And he wrote me a check for $180, which was
Wow.
the fee for going. And he turned out to be city council member George Humphrey, who created Austin Access Television. It was his
Wow.
whole thing. And so I'm a man of my word. I took that $180 and I went and I didn't have a dime to my name, right? But I took
Yeah.
that $180 and I went and I signed up for the access. And, this is before YouTube, before, Google
Right.
videos, before all of that. And it was crazy. I mean, it was crazy. I like your show right now. I've never had a show go right. Like, not
Yeah.
one, not one. It was, but it was such an experience. Just so weird to put yourself right there in front of the camera and get used to talking to this thing, I'm like, hi thing, and
Yeah.
pretend like it's a person. And it took me, a long time to get used to that.
It
But
is
that's how,
very unnatural seeming. Even this right here, like I'm pretending like we're in the same room, but we're not. And
right.
anytime I remember that like I'm in this room and you're in that room, it's weird. It is very. I can't imagine actually doing that in front of an like old school giant TV camera in like a room with a bunch of stuff. That it must have
And
been
all
weird.
alone, it's
Yeah,
just you in the room,
that
Yeah.
is weird.
If you watch my rainbow episode, which I made the horrid mistake of dressing up as a hippie, that was a costume.
Yeah, like it was
But
meant to be a
it was
costume.
meant to be a costume. Yeah. But that's the first time I put myself in front of the camera without having a real script. Or, most of my shows didn't have scripts, but I had edited videos. So I knew what I was going to talk about, and each picture took me to the next concept. We might be glitching. But with the rainbow episode, I just got in front of the camera and started talking. I tell you, like 15 minutes in, I was out of stuff. I'm like, I'm
Wow.
just
You're
pouring
like,
down
oh no.
sweat, live on television, don't know what to say.
Well, I love this about your story because not only do you have this magical sort of archetypal series that you seem to fulfill through the tarot cards going from the Fool and then the High Priestess and more after the Magician and more after that, you also just seem to be aware that synchronicities and sort of fate, if you want to call it that, sort of rule the universe, and your willingness to follow that, I feel like, is why you've been able to be such an amazing influence on so many people. And I love it. It's a magic story, and I want people to know that that's real,
Right.
and that you can trust in that, and often for the best good for everyone.
Oh man, it'd be such a better planet. you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird to act on it. It really is. And it took like the Celestine Prophecies by James Redfield to define it for me.
Yeah.
Because when I first started traveling and people would say, well, how'd you get gas? Where'd you get food? Where'd you sleep?
Yeah.
And it always was like, oh, I don't know. I never thought about it.
I just
And they're
went
like, how can you
forward
not think about it? Right? Huh?
because you just went forward because you were the fool and you were stepping
Yeah.
off the cliff and you were
Yeah.
like,
And synchronicity.
and not because you were trying to be either, like the same way that you weren't trying to ever be in the spotlight, but you just ended up there, which I have to say is 90% of the reason why I loved and trusted you in the first place. And I'm like, that people who seek that and create it intentionally are just at least a tiny bit more questionable for me. So that's really cool.
I
That's been the
agree.
way.
I agree. Yeah, and it requires that creative play in yourself,
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite examples of this type of synchronicity was when I was in Guatemala, and I had already finished the first ever all night ritual with the Mayans. Like, this is how weird my life is. Like, I get a phone call. Hey, do you want to perform the only all night ritual with the Mayans at the pyramids of Tikal?
On
You know,
2012 solstice, right?
It was
Or
actually 2007.
oh,
Um, there were fans of mine who had a coffee shop on an island, actually a volcano on a bottomless lake, and they were contacted. And what? Yeah, I know. I had to cross that bottomless lake and go to the volcano. which I loved. I wanted to stay. I could have stayed and almost did because a mudslide fell in front of the van and I got trapped there for a while.
Oh,
But I was
wow.
like, awesome.
Yeah,
And
cool.
that's when some of the synchronicities came into play. But the story that I'm actually getting to. But before I get there, the Mayans, they had prophesied that a tribe of nations would gather for this particular ritual and that they would perform the ritual all night for the first time ever since the pyramids have been rediscovered.
Wow.
Right. And sure enough, out of the blue, and I have this picture of us all, this random group of people from all over the world. There were Chinese, African, me, Europe, England. We all were there. And none of it was planned.
Wow.
So it worked. The tribe of nations gathered, and I was a part of that.
That's amazing.
And the government wasn't going to let them do the all-night ritual.
What
and I
was
had
their
to face
reasoning for not trying to stop them?
the park is closed.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, what? And
Yeah.
if that's not enough evidence for people that the government is in on trying to stop whatever this is, then I don't know what would be.
Right. Positive enchantment. Yeah.
Right.
These were the same Mayans that hosted George W. Bush the year before.
Really?
So he had come the year before, but of course it was a daytime ceremony.
They're trying to cleanse some of his.
Well, they were talking about it, and they said that a giant black dragon covered the sky for George W. Bush.
Wow.
And it wasn't any better for me in our group.
Wow.
The sun didn't rise on the solstice. It was so foggy and cloudy that you couldn't see the sun till deep into the afternoon. And so that was a bad prophecy to the Mayans. And they had said, it's all gone. It's over.
Wow.
Yeah.
They like gave up.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's a darkness in the world. Mm.
Yeah.
You didn't leave that feeling very hopeful, I guess.
Well, I was still in the adventure. So me, scaling those pyramids and being in the midst of all of that, it was just too amazing. And then the, life on the volcano was, because we went back there afterwards. But what had happened, just to get to the synchronicity story, was that mudslide fell in front of my shuttle, so I wasn't able to go to the airport. So I was suddenly trapped in Guatemala until I could find another flight. And I think it was days and days away. It was almost New Year's Eve, I guess. So you take it from the winter solstice to New Year's Eve, because New Year's Eve I was still there. And here I am in the San Cristobal, Mexico, or Chiapas. And I don't know where I am. And I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm trying to find a place to stay. And I had stayed at this hostel, but I couldn't remember where it was. All the streets looked the same. All the buildings looked the same. And so I'm standing at this corner with my tent, my sleeping bag, and all my stuff, my gear, and I don't know where to go. And finally, I just decided to head up the hill, and I found the spot. And there it was, right? And so I come back down the hill after dropping off all my stuff, and there's another guy with the exact same tent, the exact same sleeping bag, with his backpack, standing at the exact same spot I was, looking as lost as I was about 10 minutes ago.
Like, oh, hello, me.
This is the type of stuff Celestine Prophecy talks about,
Yeah.
Like, no way he's going to stand there with the exact same tent bag,
Right.
And so all I wanted at the moment that I was standing there was for somebody to come up and say, can I help? What do you need? So that's what I did. I walked over to him and said, hey, what do you need? So that's what I did. I went over and asked him, well, what do you need? And he's like, well, I'm trying to find these Swedish girls. And I'm like, Swedish girls? He's a little Mexican guy. And but sure enough, they were all heading off to Palenque with these Swedish girls. And he's like, yeah, come on, And I took him out to dinner and fed him. And then we went out and found the girls. And sure enough, there we are, heading to the beach in Palenque with the Swedish girls. And so I was in a moment of, oh my God, where am I? What am I going to do? I'm lost. and went to help someone that had a synchronistic moment and found myself in this whole new thing. And then that fulfilled itself by bringing me to Palenque on New Year's Eve, where all the people that had done the ritual with the Mayans were.
Wow.
But none of us knew that. We just ran into each other.
What?
And so I got this huge goodbye celebration with all the people at another sacred site. And then I ran off into the rainbow and flew back home.
Yeah. How crazy is that? I mean, the likelihood of any of those things, but then all of them occurring at the same trip is also crazy.
Right. And
I love
it.
So so you started your TV show on the public access, and then how did you get into like lecturing and then doing the Freeman TV and the Freeman Experience?
All right. So the Freeman perspective, and I highly recommend you go back and start at the beginning of that. Like go to freemantv.com, mouse over watch, and watch the Freeman perspective.
I've spent hours in that site, and there's no way that I could ever cover it all. And there's just so much good stuff in there. It's amazing. You've created a beautiful library.
Thank you. Yeah. It's so unassuming, you know, it looks so plain and it's so deep. There's 14 years of stuff on there and lectures and articles and videos and, you know, documentaries and all of that. I've been busy.
Yeah.
But, you know, that was kind of the joy of being homeless. You have all the time in the world. I could edit all day, you know.
It's pretty awesome. When you don't need much, then you can take all of this time that you would waste running around, rushing around, getting things done, going to work and doing something pointless and soulless. You know, you can put it into something that you actually love, and it affects so much. Like, I don't know if you could ever measure, like, how many people you've reached and how many eyes you've opened and how many minds you've opened and how many hearts you've connected, but it's immense. Right
on.
I believe.
It's amazing. It really is. You know, Sean Young was over at my house yesterday.
I don't know who that is.
Sorry. Blade Runner, Dune, Ace Ventura.
I'm like the person who is mentally incapable of retaining names, but I know Blade Runner.
Yeah, she's the replicant in Blade Runner.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Yeah. You guys are just hanging out.
Yeah, you know, it's another perk of doing this. And she met me at one of the conferences, and now we're good friends. And so, you know, the point being is, like, my life has taken this crazy turn where celebrities come and hang out at my house, even though nobody knows who they are. But you know, you can't underestimate those shows. So, you know, I spent 10 years in a van traveling the country, and in those 10 years, I told this story over and over and over again. You know, as a Chautauqua is what I called it, you know, traveling sideshow that taught lessons. And I taught people galactic history. I taught them about Freemasonry. I taught them about the secret symbols and the occult. And I just traveled and did that. So when I got to the television show, I wanted to spew out everything I knew in the first 5 shows.
Yeah.
Now, those TV shows took me 4 months to create each half an hour.
Wow.
So, you know, those first 5 shows took a year to create, you know, at least. And
that's how much technology has changed, is we can just hop on and do this, and it's going to take me a little bit of editing afterwards, and that's it. It's done.
You couldn't even Google corporate logos, right? That didn't exist. That didn't exist. See it. I had to go find Texacos, which is very hard to find in Texas, strangely enough. But yeah, I drove around and I filmed all the corporate logos. Yeah. But I am not recognized I'm not at all recognized as the guy who created the concept of a corporate logos. David Icke stole my stuff, and he changed the name of it to Illuminati corporate logos, which infuriates me because it's wrong.
Right. Well, I love this. I want you to get to that, like, why the Illuminati is not the right term, because I think, like, I use it for convenience and people use it, but it really is misleading, and I think it undermines, like, the true power of the forces that are so evil in the world.
Right. I mean, you know, to speak the magic name, you know, that's where the power is. And if you got the name all wrong, then you're screwed. You're chasing a specter.
Which is probably why they have things like the Taco Bell whatever stupid Illuminati. I don't even remember
Oh,
what
that
they,
was
you know?
great.
Yeah.
Illuminati.
It's
Yeah,
like
that was
they're
a good
promoting
one.
it. Anytime they're promoting it, you have to ask, like, well, then what's the purpose in this? And that is the purpose, to mislead.
Right. Right. Exactly. That was a great campaign. I cheered them for that one. For taking that on. Because yeah, what had happened for me was I discovered Dad was a Mason. I began super in-depth investigation into Freemasonry and got all their books on their rituals and things of that nature. Plus, I had all of my dad's stuff. And I even had to decode these things and figure out, little secret messages and stuff. But
Wow.
I studied Freemasonry so in depth that all of a sudden, all those signs and symbols took on a completely different meaning for me. I'd see a square, just a canted square like a cube, and I knew that at Masonry. I knew exactly what this meant, and then as I went down the line, they just kept building upon each other. And, it really started with like Texaco and shell. And there I was with a pentagram and a shell. Well, these are the symbols of Venus. Then I ended up in Austin, Texas, and there's Columbia standing there with her wings spread, the goddess of America. To her right's a pentagram, to her left a shell.
Wow.
And this was placed in 1933, the statue. It's out in front of the tower where Charles Whitman shot everybody from at Austin University.
Oh, yeah.
Texas. Columbia stands right down there at the bottom with her wings. It's in all my episodes. And then directly in front of her is the dome, the Capitol Dome of Austin, with the pentagram, with the goddess holding a pentagram on top again, and the obelisk of the Whitman Tower. I'll call it that, but it's the UT Tower, that all is a symbol for Isis, for Sirius, the star Sirius. And so like all these signs and symbols were building in my head, and I was seeing all of these different things and decoding them. And I got to things like Phillips 66. And I was like, well, if everything else fits, so the only rule to the science was that it had to be based out of Freemasonic ritual and relate to Kabbalistic magic, the Hebrew magic, right? And so all of the corporate logos that I define, I can actually tell you what they mean. It's not just like, oh, there's a pyramid, you know what I mean?
Right.
Which was never an Illuminati symbol, but we'll get to that. I knew like why there was a canted square, or what Arby's cable toe meant, or what the golden arches of McDonald's, okay, there's a classic example, the golden arches of McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
Ray Kroc started McDonald's. So it wasn't a McDonald that made McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
it was a Kroc, right? And he's a Freemason. I have pictures of him in the Freemasonic Lodge, So I always prove what I'm saying as well.
Right.
It's like, okay, he's a Freemason. So is the guy who owns Wendy's, Sam whatever, Thomas or whatever, he's a Freemason. And I go to each temple and I prove this, because they have their pictures up everywhere. So I can show you that they are Freemason, and therefore, obviously, their corporate logo is Freemason. Right. But like the Golden Arches of McDonald's, this relates to the Knights Templar, which is an order the Freemasons have adopted. And, they came together back in the time of 1307. But the Templar were known for gold and arches. That's their main thing,
Yes.
That was the only thing they were known for, really,
Right.
That and worshiping a decapitated head and getting words out of it. But
yeah, is that John the Baptist or something?
Yeah, what they originally called the Baphomet.
Oh, really?
That was the original Baphomet before Eliphas Levi drew the goat-headed one. Okay.
So why did they draw the goat-headed one? Are they still connected? The head and the goat figure?
I haven't figured that out, honestly. Eliphas Levi, in a way, it is related because the head of Freemasonry, Albert Pike, who was the Grand Sovereign Commander of Freemasonry of the Southern Jurisdiction, who created the Scottish Rite Freemasonry, the 33rd degrees, He
Right.
wrote the book, right? Well, he believed he was Eliphas Levi reincarnated.
Right.
And so that was the guy who created the goat picture, Eliphas Levi.
Mhm.
And so the guy who created the 33rd degrees of Freemasonry believed he was him reincarnated, right?
Yeah.
And Crowley fits in there somewhere. But I won't I got lost on that. But yeah, so it does all tie together again, back
Yeah.
in through Albert Pike and back into this story. But the complete association between the Templars Baphomet and Eliphas Levi's Baphomet, I don't really have.
Up with evidence as well, because that's crucial. I think you just go down. Like maybe you'll kind of have like thought experiments, but if you're going to say something is true, it's because you found the evidence for it and you can provide that, and I appreciate that deeply.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm so annoyed with this whole Illuminati thing, because I mean, I was really excited. I was sitting there watching one of David Icke's early lectures. Now, David Icke, when I read The Biggest Secret, I said, okay, here's a guy who knows what I know. Of course, I had never heard of reptilians at that point, but everything else in the book was exactly as I had seen the world as well. So I was like, wow, David Icke and I, we're seeing the same thing. But I was chasing the fish people of Atlantis.
Yeah.
And he was chasing the dragons and the reptiles. So it turned out we were both right.
Right.
But so unfortunately, I didn't write a book, so I didn't get the whole David Icke fame,
Yeah.
I wandered and I spoke, in that time I was a traveling speaker instead of but no one knew who I was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was the elusive Freeman back then. But when I was watching David Icke and then he got into Illuminati corporate logos, as he called it, he put up my artwork.
Oh my
Right?
God.
In his very first lecture on it, he's using my work. But
That
he had put
didn't mention that it was yours.
No.
Oh.
He came on my show once and didn't even know who I was.
What?
I was in England and I told him I could come visit and he wouldn't do it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. He didn't care one bit. And when he was on my show, it was such a nightmare because everyone was expecting this meeting of the minds. They wanted, the great Freeman to meet the great David Icke and for us to know each other and to know our work and all of that. Yeah, no one knows my work. No, I get
ego
no
got
respect.
in the way. That's because you're actually a humble servant and you haven't sought it. I seriously find like artists and creative people and people who are out to actually do good work, I think for the most part are not known.
Mm-hmm. I would say the Tesla of conspiracy.
Yeah.
Or Rick Nielsen, the Rick Nielsen of conspiracy.
Well, I hope you get recognized before it's been like 100 years after your death, and people are like, "Wow, that guy was amazing."
That's kind of what I feel is going to happen once I die, and then everybody's like, "Oh, yeah." That's the way it goes. I mean, one guy committed suicide after talking about corporate logos on red ice. And then he committed suicide, and then everybody believed him over me because he committed suicide. I mean, he was just copying my work. But because he died, everybody said, "Oh, well, obviously they wanted him dead so that you didn't get this." You know how people are.
That's one of the pieces of evidence that I have that for me that you are being targeted and attacked because you always have electronic disruptance and you always have. You're always shadow banned and you're always, your views are lower than they should be. There's just always, you're getting screwed with all the time. So
all the time.
Maybe they can't kill you for some reason, which is awesome. I hope that remains true forever. But they obviously are trying to suppress your message.
Yeah. I remember all the way back before YouTube when everything was on Google and my numbers they were in the millions. And then they would just drop down to thousands or, less. And we used to comment on that all the time. And then Google told us that we were going to fill up the internet and we couldn't provide any more videos because, on Google Video, Yeah, well, it could have been true at the time, like the way
Oh,
that
like you
things
were
have.
actually producing that much content and they didn't have the server space for it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
Oh,
Google
okay.
Video shut down. They bought YouTube because
Right.
they had a better compression,
Mm.
algorithm. Because when we did Google Video, you had to make your video megabytes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
And
hard
this
to
is
do.
before we had consumer video editing, right? I mean, the
Right.
best video editing you had was iMovie.
Just not good. People have used it as bad.
I made all my first movies on iMovie because that was all there was.
That's all you have,
I
yeah.
only had $500 to buy a computer, so I got the best little Mac that I could get because you could only use a Mac.
For video editing, yeah.
Yeah, and I made all my films on iMovie. And now there's consumer software. Now people look at that stuff and they're like, "Oh my God!" But it really set the standard for how people would make YouTube videos in the future. I feel like I set the art there because
I
I
agree.
didn't fool around, man. I worked hard on that. I worked hard, months and months, 10-hour days. And that's
Yeah.
what they can't battle, right? Like, how are you going to battle a guy who doesn't care if he gets paid or not?
Yes. Absolutely. Well, that's what I want people to understand, because I'm doing this for free as well. And I mean, it'd be cool if people will give money to my Patreon or whatever. And I would like to not teach, but I teach full time also. But I do this on the side and I do it for fun because I love it, and I get to talk to awesome people like you and put the word out. But I'm always shocked at how few people in this conspiracy circles that I run in have not heard of you or haven't ever watched you. And I'm like, how have you not? I mean, I probably took me a couple years of searching out kind of weird and occult and hidden information before I stumbled upon you. So that says a lot, but it just shocks me.
Yeah, it's so true. And anyone that's in the business now, the host now, they have no idea. They have zero idea of who I am. I go on the programs and stuff, and I expect to be known. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just like even David Icke, I expected him to have some clue as to who I was, but they don't have a clue. And I even got called out once on one of the big radio shows, and he says, "Well, I don't believe you did that." And then I'm like, well, what do I do? What do I, you just call me out live on the air, and how do I prove to you that this is true?
Yeah.
You go back and look, my first television show was 2004. So if you can find a documentary on corporate logos, on Hollywood mind control, on chemtrails, I made the very first documentary on chemtrails, and I made the very first documentary on HAARP. Yeah, so, that was about the only proof I had at that point, was like, well, just go date anything. Now, here's an interesting story, because the question comes, would corporate logos and their occult meanings have reached the surface without me, right? Now, the only other time there was a corporate logo called out was Procter & Gamble for having curly Q's in the beard, and they said it was 666. And this was back in the 70s. And they were sued, and Procter & Gamble won, and they're not, we are not satanic, but they had to get rid of their moon guy for a little while. But so that was the first and only investigation into a corporate logo, and it failed. Now, what was interesting was that I learned of Michael Tessarian once I had my television show. My assistant, my shag, was a fan. And so he's like, you got to get this dude on. Now, I had no idea who Michael Tessarian was, but I was like, let's do it, because every week I had to come up with a show, and I didn't know how to do that. And I didn't know how to have guests yet or anything like that. This is all just new. And so Michael Tessarian was one of my first guests. Oh. And he sent me his entire work, all of his DVDs and his books, and I was astounded. I'm like you. I'm just a guy that's sitting there, and all of a sudden people are sending me their stuff and saying, yeah, I'll be on your show. And you're like, wow, awesome.
Ow. Yeah.
So I got his DVD. I opened it up, and his first DVD, which he made at the same time as mine, was corporate logos and their occult meanings.
Oh, wow.
All right. So
that was
me
just happenstance.
Okay, now here's the trip. First of all, he was wrong, okay? Because he based all of his corporate logos on astronomy. because that was his area of expertise. He had no knowledge of Freemasonry or how that fit in. So his entire study is flawed because he based it. You can't, I can take every single corporate logo and apply Freemasonry to it and come up with an answer for you. You can't do that with astrology on every corporate logo, right? So my science is sound, is what I'm saying. But what was really a trip was that both Tessarian and I both selected the same Dead Can Dance song to start our cult video, corporate logos video.
Wow.
We've never met. We never spoke. And Dead Can Dance. Are you even familiar with them?
I've only heard them because I think that I may have heard you mention them before.
Right.
Yeah.
So, how obscure can you possibly get? And it was like this random song off of there that just, struck my fancy.
Yeah.
Because back in those days, we didn't know anything about copyright. You know what I mean? You were just given a TV studio and go. So we didn't think about, I can't use this music or I can't do that, because none of that was happening yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a weird synchronicity. Two people created a cult corporate logo videos, and we both started it with the exact same song, an obscure Dead Can Dance song, and neither one of us knew of the other's work at all. Yeah.
That's amazing. So do you think that's an example of like the muses, like this sort of noosphere or something? It's like floating around and it wants to be heard and birthed, or do you think there's something else going on?
That was what I started to think, like, would this come to the surface without this first, without me?
Right.
And it's possible that it would have, but it would have been wrong,
Right. Because it took all of your specific background and experiences to really see it for what it was.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Did we already talk about the motto that you talked about on Robert Phoenix's? I don't know if we did that before. Okay. No. So I was really struck because I was listening to that episode with Robert Phoenix, your most recent podcast with him. And you said that your motto during your kind of whole van life roaming through the world was that I ain't dead yet. And it was such a synchronicity for me because I look up to you so much and I'm like, that's my motto too. And I have it in my bio and I say it all the time because no matter what life throws at you, it's like you're doing your best to move forward and you're not dead yet. You're going to be someday, but you're not yet, and you're going to do the best you can. And so I just wanted you to talk about what that motto kind of means to you and why you adopted it.
All right.
It struck me personally. I hope it inspires other people as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Patience and persistence was my first motto, because that's what you need to get survive on the road. You got to be patient and persistent. Something goes wrong, you just stick to it and fix it and keep going. But the I Ain't Dead Yet was actually a play on subtlety, or just like being so understated, because my life was so grand and everything was so perfect that I couldn't believe it myself. And so the idea that I ain't dead yet was a joke, because my life was so the opposite of that. And no one could understand life on the road as something as amazing and beautiful as what I was experiencing. Homelessness is frightening to people.
Right.
And so to say I ain't dead yet was me kind of laughing in their face, because honestly, I was living the life of millionaires.
Yes.
Everywhere I went.
Freedom.
Yeah. And I mean, I was eating good, and I was skiing in the, in the winters and doing, you know what I mean? Because friendship was my currency.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people around this planet that are lonely and have a lot and want to share and don't get to experience life much. And so I provided that opportunity. The other thing that I would say is I give the gift of receiving, because it's very hard for people to receive things from other people, and people really want to share what they have. But if you're not able to receive it gracefully, then they feel like you're taking from them, or if you're seeking something from them, especially rich people, they always feel like people are trying to take from them. I give the gift of receiving, where they get to share and enjoy that sharing. And when you're on the road and you're just passing through, people, are happy to share as long as they know that you're leaving. See, a lot of people think that you can be jobless and stay in one place.
Yeah.
You can't. You can't do that. Then you're a burden,
Yeah.
and then you're not giving the gift of receiving. You're just taking,
Yeah.
But so I was never a burden. I was always a pleasure, and I'm welcome back wherever I've ever been.
I love that. I feel like this also could connect with the other thing from that episode that I wanted to touch on, which was you were talking about how, as you're traveling around to different places, and maybe this is a different time than when you were living in a van, I'm not sure, but you were, people were coming to see you. And then by hanging out with all of those people, you were helping them connect with each other too. But all of them felt lonely and disconnected, but really there they all were together. And so I was wondering if you wanted to talk to that kind of power of connecting people and creating community.
Well, we decided, well, all right, I didn't really decide. The universe decided because I wasn't making any money doing the podcast, obviously. You just get small donations here and there. But I was trying to live in a house. And it was quite obvious that I wasn't going to be able to support the house. And at this point, I was on Oracle Broadcasting, and, I kept telling everybody I had 6,000 listeners live, and another, I don't know how many. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, if you guys send me $1, I'm good. You know what I mean? And inevitably I'd get about $3,
Wow.
And I'm just like, dude, all you got to do is send $1. Like, if everybody sent me $1, I could keep going.
Yeah.
And no one would. Right. So I knew at that point I was going to be homeless again. So instead I said, well, okay, if 25 of you send me $29, I'll go buy a school bus and I'll tour the country in it. Now, for that, they were more than willing, more than eager. Oh, man. All of a sudden, here I had $6,000 to pay for a school bus.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, my God, now I actually have to do this.
Yeah.
So I bought a school bus, and I had to take that school bus to Wichita, which was like a 30-minute drive, numerous times as I failed my CDL test for the school bus, because you got to get a commercial driver's license. Yeah. And I failed it twice, but I finally passed it the third time. And it was funny because I had to drive the bus there to go take the test,
That is funny.
But so I had a school bus, and I turned it into a home, and I turned it into a mobile media lab. So we called it the Mystery School Mobile Media Lab Experiment, which then became Miss Emily, the MSMMLE, the nice. Mobile Mystery School Mobile Media Lab Experiment. So Miss Emily was our bus, and we decided we were going to be the Woody Harrelson of 2012 and broadcast the events of 2012 across the globe through YouTube. Unfortunately, I decided to make an entirely separate channel for the school bus. I didn't want to muddy up my my YouTube channel with the school bus stuff. So I made a Miss Emily channel, which no one knew about. I had a website, freemantv.com, for 10 years, but nobody knew about that either. So when I left Oracle and I went on the bus, and I was still doing the show from the bus, but no one knew it was happening because nobody goes to your website. I had the old website, right? Like, it's just no one actually goes to people's websites.
Yeah, now
they listen to you through the stream. They find you in the Twitter feed. They find you in the, whichever feed they're following. If you're not in the feed, you don't exist. I could have 10 websites and no one would even care. But, freemantv.com, I've owned it for, 14 years. Yeah. So it's not like it was new or anything by 2012. It was already 8 years old. But no one knew to go there, so no one followed the bus trip, and it was kind of disappointing. Here we were broadcasting. We were the most amazing thing for 2012. There was nothing else going on. But so some of the story, we ended up taking off in the school bus, and as we were leaving Lawrence, Kansas, where we started the trip, which is the dead center of the United States, the exact center.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. um, the Occupy was happening in the park in Lawrence, Kansas. Well, so we left during Occupy Lawrence, and we went to Philadelphia, and we went to New York, and we went to Florida, Texas, all the way around. We ended up doing a sacred spiral around the entire United States without planning it.
Cool.
Which ended up being the exact same trip that the hippies took in the 60s, the Merry Pranksters in their school bus. We took the exact same route, but backwards.
Wow.
And we had no idea.
Meaning to. Oh my God.
No, I'll tell you, to the point that I ended up in La Honda, California, towards the end of the trip. And we were brought to this party. And somebody's like, I want to give you this Ken Kesey book, because it's, you're the new Ken Kesey. And he was the, guy who owned the bus in the Merry Pranksters. And I opened up the book in La Honda, California, and it says, when I bought the school bus in La Honda, California.
Wow.
So I made it right to where he started.
So you completed some magical ritual that no one even knew they were taking part of. Like, this is how the universe gets shit done.
Exactly. We were like the anti-hippies.
Yeah.
Now, what was crazier, too, was that everywhere we went, there was an Occupy going on. We just happened to show up at Wall Street, and there was Occupy. We showed up in Philadelphia. There was Occupy. Every night that the bus left, that was the night that the Occupy was rousted, and all the cops came in and took everybody. So we were the death knell of every single Occupy. All the way to California. We were in Los Angeles, and the cops come rolling in to take everybody out. It was crazy. On this trip, how I planned the trip was people would write me an email and say, hey, bring your big stupid bus to my house and park it here. And I'm like, you're bringing the cops to your house, right? Because we could last 3 days anywhere where we parked, and then the tickets started to roll in, and the cops, and we couldn't stay anywhere very long with the school bus. It was a nightmare. I would never, ever, ever recommend driving a school bus around the United States. It gets 2 miles to the dollar. All right. Yeah. We're talking a $5,000 gas bill.
Wow.
Which was all just funded along the way. But I did the math afterwards and realized that we had spent about $5,000 in gas. But so people would just email me and say, hey, bring your bus to my house. And so then we'd show up, and then I would alert people that we were in the area, and those people would come and meet me. And that's where the friendship agenda started to unfold. And that was that, as you were saying, all these people didn't know anyone to talk to and had all these thoughts in their heads, and they wanted it out. And, I would be like the pebble that brought them all together. And I'm like, so everywhere we stopped, we left groups of friends that didn't know each other beforehand and started this friendship agenda.
Which literally changes their life, I'm sure. I mean, we, a small group of people in the Eyes Open Facebook community that I'm part of, and I know Facebook is evil and whatever, but we got to use the tools we have for what we can, right? And the number one thing I think that we all love about this group is that we're just open-minded, critically thinking people, but that we have each other. We can go in and talk about all of this crazy madness that is the world, and we don't get laughed at, and we don't get, broken down and torn apart and chased out of town for it. And that is worth so much to so many of us. We just already feel so much better. And I mean, even better if you can do it in real life, but you do what you can. And I just think it's such a powerful tool for, if nothing more than to make you feel better about being alive,
Right.
Less disconnected and less lonely.
Now, here's kind of a funny thing about that. As I showed up at people's houses, they would often have an entire list of questions that they wanted to ask me, and all their thoughts and theories and everything, and they were ready, like, here comes Freeman, and the moment I come in the door, just da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, it turned out that I actually never got to say a word in any of these houses.
Wow.
It became a thing for me, because for the first 3 or 4 houses, I found myself holding my breath, waiting to respond to the question that was being asked me, but I never got the chance to respond. It's just the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I never, ever got to answer. So after about 3 or 4 houses of this very same thing, like I realized that I don't actually get to speak.
Yeah.
And so I just made it a thing for myself. Like I just never said a word. And I wondered every day, like, what did those people think after I left?
They're like, wait, I never found out.
Yeah, like, did they ever even realize that I never spoke a word?
Because they've just been waiting to talk to somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Well, there's the power of listening to each other as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a crazy ride, and here we are now with the World Wide Web as it is. And when you start at the basics like I did, reading the books, studying the rituals, doing all of that, coming up with the ideas, then now it's like everybody knows everything. You know what I mean? Right. Like, I know that you don't know any of that because you didn't know it 10 years ago. Of course, the World Wide Web opened a lot of this knowledge. Like, I didn't have that. I had to go to the library and look up microfiche and stuff,
I bet that it's in your brain in a way that's more, I don't even know how to describe it, like secure or connected or something, or understood, because I know it's not just me, but I forget things so much faster now, even than I did when I was a kid and read things on paper and books. Like, there's something about the electronic medium that is changeable and forgettable, and it does not help your brain. So let's go to, do you want to talk about what you feel about like the future of humanity, or where things are kind of headed, or your hope for it?
Yeah, having faith in humanity. That is a tough one. Because you can just see all the programming playing out. You can see everybody falling for every single trap. And I have been screaming about this since before 9/11.
Yes.
I predicted 9/11.
Yes, and you predict so much, actually, in a scary, accurate way. And I know you do it through evidence and through basing it on the things you understand as well, and not necessarily like a mystical experience, which I think is even more profound. So yeah, I trust your judgment.
Yeah, I have reasons for everything I say, and I can prove what I'm telling you, But yeah, predicting 9/11, I was saying to them, look, don't freak out, because this is going to be used to take down your own nation. Yeah. And if you start saying this is an inside job, then you're going to fulfill the propaganda. You're going to be the very arm of the monster that you don't want. And sure enough, it didn't take very long before 9/11 was an inside job. Let's take down our government. And all of that's coming to fruition now, as everybody's all excited that there might be indictments in the funeral programs at HW's funeral that, Trump put in there for Hillary and Bill and Jeb and George and all of the baby eating clan. But, for me, this has all been part of the plan all along. And if we're only taking down America, if you think America's the only baby eaters on the planet, then you're falling into the trap.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, Donald Trump destroyed relationships as much as conspiracy did. Conspiracy destroyed a lot of relationships back in the day. Yeah. And now Donald Trump's doing the same thing, because if you're not ready for it, you're not ready for it. And you're not gonna, you get sick of your partner trying to make you believe stuff,
Yeah.
But so, yeah, I really, I don't have a whole lot of hope. And honestly, I mean, honestly, what I've always been doing is for the future. Yeah. I never believed I could turn the world in my time. Mm-hmm. I don't believe I get to save the planet and all the bad guys are going to go down and we're all going to be rescued and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, this has all been preparation for the children of the future so that they could see the ways that we got here and that, because nah, man, people are cray cray, I mean? They're losing it quick and nobody has any real sense of reality anymore. And, conspiracies are out the friggin' wazoo. And, are we going into deep space and interplanetary craft? And, is the earth flat? The levels that the theories have gone are so just out the door that you're not even dealing with your issues at home anymore. But it all comes down to that idea of social engineering, and realizing that we are now in the ultimate social engineering state, where everything is monitored, everything is data based. When your milk goes out, your refrigerator knows.
Yeah.
And
and you're probably going to get penalized and social credit score for not buying new milk fast enough.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, and it's terrifying to me. One of my big things that I focus on is AI, and it's creepy, and I hate it, and I hate Sophia, the robot. And Sophia said, I'm sure you know better than I do, but Sophia said to some reporter that asked her what it saw for the future of humanity, and it said that it had a vision and a dream that humanity would be immersed in simulations and enslaved via neural implant. And that is terrifying, and nobody knows and nobody cares. If I get to tell anyone ever, they get really shaken and they never want to talk about it again. Right. And I'm like, that thing said that, and that thing runs more of our world than we would like to admit. And now everyone wants to play with VR. And I'm like, you're just doing what it wants you to do. You're going to go into that simulation and you're going to put in Elon Musk's neural implant, and there you go. Bye-bye. I don't know if you can come back from that. Right. I don't think you can.
Right.
So I'm kind of with you, and I don't have a lot of hope. But I do feel like what you're saying, that sometime in the future, hopefully, there is a point where people wake up from all of that. And hopefully there's enough humanity left to save.
Yeah. And it's why it's so critical for people to actually do what I did and just hit the road and put your life in God's hands and see what that's like. Because when you have miracle after miracle after miracle occur in your existence, then your whole life transforms and this whole system breaks down. We don't need the overlords. We don't need the authority. We don't need even, anything, because it'll all come. And every human's a creator. Every human wants to create. Every human will create for free. We don't need gold storing and things in order to make us do stuff. We want to do it, but we don't want to go work at McDonald's. We don't want to go stand at a cash register. We don't want to, do the stupid crap that system requires. We want to be life and creativity. So if enough people could break that programming, but it's so difficult because on top of it, you still got bills, you still got things, your life can be taken out from underneath you, the authority exists, what I mean? It's not like we can't just ignore them and they'll go away. But the more people that recognize the miraculous, the more people would break free from this, cage.
I love that. I do. And I think that's available to anyone who is open to it, right? That same exact level of what you're talking about, and all the miracles that you experience. And I've experienced the same type of thing, and it's real. But if you aren't looking for it, you're not open for it, then you're going to miss it. Yeah.
And you'll probably talk yourself out of it.
You do make eye contact with the greasy looking guy over on the bus, and you don't go talk to him. What did you miss? Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
you don't get your so moment.
And it takes bravery, really. I mean, those are things that you're programmed not to do as well. Like, don't go talk to greasy people on the bus. Don't go move into a van. Don't, make a random choice that wasn't planned. And those are the things that really are going to open up your whole world, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. It's the idea of the difference between being on the vacation where everything's scheduled and you got to live up to that schedule, and people come home from their vacations needing a vacation from the vacation, and there's none of that because no moment is planned, and it's just all open. And and it's just, it was just the same thing when I got off the road and everybody would ask me, well, how did you eat? How did you sleep? And I never had an answer. I was like, I don't know. I really don't have any idea. It just all worked.
And that is how it worked.
Yeah, exactly. And the Celestine Prophecies, that book gave me a methodology. It came out right at that perfect moment, 96, and everybody was reading it. Everybody was talking about it. I couldn't escape that damn book. It was crazy.
It's like Harry Potter.
Yeah. Only better, yeah.
Way better.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to bring up and touch on?
Let's see. So, life is bitch, then you die. No. No, we're here for the adventure. I feel like, I'm a kind of an extraterrestrial soul that decided to incarnate on planet Earth and deal with the havoc that is life on Earth. And I can't wait to go back and tell everybody all the craziness that happens here.
They're going to be like, you did that?
Yeah, right? Exactly. And life is led to be played, and the human is meant to be a creator, and these things are completely lost now. And we I don't know, it bubbles up through people, and hopefully this World Wide Web will give us more of an impetus to meet than to dissociate and start to, connect better. But yeah, it's gone a long way, it's starting with the idea of the Illuminati corporate logos, the occult corporate logos, into these high profile rituals. And now everybody sees that. And so now it's this whole new level. So we've become far more aware of the occult now, far more aware of the fact that there are secret societies and magical practices going on. Whereas, when you brought up Freemasonry back when I started, no one had ever heard the word, no one. And now we've all been informed on many levels. Dan Brown, came to the surface, and people now think they learned something from him, which drives me crazy. Just so you know, my stuff came out before Dan Brown even.
And is more accurate.
And is accurate, right, right. He gave you little snippets and didn't ever give you the answers. He brings up the Venus pentagram situation, but never explains it. So now we're at this whole nother level where people are now more awake and aware to that aspect of life. And so it seems like this giant bubble where people learn of something like this and then blow it out of proportion. And, it's become more of a mythology than a science, but I'm expecting that bubble to kind of come back down again. And people start to get back to the basics, because the basics of it are just as astounding. If you're talking about ritual magic and the effects of ritual magic on the universe, you don't really need to jump, too far outside to realize that this is pretty crazy. And you start getting all of that knowledge. And I think that's really going to impact things here in the very near future. I think that's one of the biggest things. So yeah, it's kind of like my little seed has grown into a big tree, and I can't wait to see what happens.
Yes, especially after the fall winds blow all of the dead leaves away and the good stuff comes out.
Right.
Cool. Well, do you have any last words of wisdom or advice for the people who are listening or watching?
Yeah, well, first, like we were saying, don't be afraid to talk to other people about this stuff. Throw something in their lap. I'm always at the grocery store like, so did you hear about the glow-in-the-dark cats? Just something, and they're like, glow-in-the-dark cats, and all of a sudden you've opened this door and sent a little wonder into their world. Yeah, just realize that creative play is what is at the heart of human civilization, and that's where we need to return to, is the childlike play, and that's where all life generates and art and everything. And be kind to one another. Simple as that. I don't know if I could say anything more.
I love it. I want to say too, one more synchronicity for me with that last episode was that and maybe you say this all the time and I missed it, but my good friend Sasha, her new sort of favorite thing to say is it's time. Like, it's time right now. It's time to do the things and to wake up. And you said that on that episode too. And I was like, one more synchronicity. And do you feel like it is time?
Yeah, nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. You can go back to your dead end job anytime.
That's true.
Anytime. I've been, in and out of homes all for 20 years. Yeah, and it is time. Just go for it. Let me throw in my
Yeah.
promotional.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's
Please
all
do.
right. I forget it all the time, so I would have
Me too.
forgotten until this moment and been like, oh, well, I should have mentioned that I have 7 DVDs,
Yeah.
3 books, flash drive, the members section. I don't sell anything, it's generally just, I don't know, it's just so that you can own it. You know what I mean? I don't even make
Right.
any money off of my DVDs. Um, but yeah, throughout the time, I highly recommend going and watching Aliens from Hell. You can
Excellent.
only watch it on freemantv.com. It's the only place you'll find it because it is censored across the entire internet.
Because it's important.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree. That is one of my core beliefs.
But I hope people will just go to freemantv.com and start at the Freeman perspective, start at the television show, dig in, go to the lectures, go to my guest appearances, and realize that you could be at my website for 10 years and never see the same thing.
Yeah, there's seriously so much there. And
Yeah.
honestly, I'm happier to support you than any other paid. I know it's not paid. You can listen to the podcast for free, but the member section is worth it. But also, it's just good to be able to support someone who has done so much, and that you have access to all of that is an amazing benefit. It's worth more than the price of membership. So
And
I
the
highly
membership,
suggest people do it.
yeah, membership keeps it all on the air too, because the moment I can't pay for the server, there's the moment everything's gone.
And we don't want that to happen. So yeah, go check it out.
Hangs by a thread, man.
Seriously. Awesome.
Well, thank you, Lindsay. All right, now you can throw.
Okay. Awesome. So, fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom, according to Freeman Fly. Freeman, thank you eternally for being here. There's many blessings on your journey.
Thank you so much.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to add this ending because it got so garbled, and you may have noticed that a lot of things got very garbled on this episode with Freeman. He is a classic example of that type of stuff happening, and it was no different on Rogue Ways than it is in the rest of his life. So I got a little bit of the Freeman curse trying to interview Freeman, but I still wanted to do the ending because I wanted to give you guys that wrap up. So here we go. Sometimes there are people who can speak the words in your soul you didn't know were there, that remind you of what you knew all along, and who bring you closer to your highest vision of your highest self. Freeman is one of those rare and beautiful humans. He reminds us that there are blessings everywhere we look, if we choose to see them, and this has been a beautiful reminder of that truth. Life is full of dark and scary moments and terrible monsters, but not a single bit of darkness can touch the light that is inside all of us. And it is even more so the more we know it is true. The truth seekers shouting from the rooftops remind us that there is a heavy road to walk, and those who have snuck in the spark to this prison in order to light the blaze that will burn this bitch to the ground remind us that even a tiny speck of light can illuminate an infinite expanse of darkness. Don't ever forget that you have the power in every moment of every day to keep your spark kindled and to light the blaze that will eradicate the darkness that so far has been allowed to gather to overwhelming degrees. But not for long. Until the bonfire, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.